Hi, and welcome to Season 2 of the Team Deakins Podcast, a collection of informal conversations between Roger and James Deakins and a guest. We never know where the conversation will take us, so listen in and see where it goes. This episode is sponsored by Aperture, a premier manufacturer of LED lighting with the industry's greatest variety of fixtures for your complete lighting needs. Aperture recently announced the new Storm family of lights. With LED white light quality that matches natural daylight and classic tungsten bulbs, plus extreme low-end dimming while maintaining color quality. Discover more about the new Storm lights and the complete Aperture lighting ecosystem at aperture.com. Today, we're speaking with a cinematographer. Among his credits are A Single Man, Buried, The Way Back, and The Room Next Door. We're pleased to welcome Edu Grau. Edu, I should say. Edu, thank you for doing this.
Thank you. I'm truly honored to be here, guys. Yes.
Well, we'd love to start with our regular question is, how did you get to where you are today? Is this something you always knew as a kid? Did you take another path? Were you visual, or did you want to be a bank teller and then ended up here? What's the story?
Actually, I was terrible at art. Like when I was at school, like I was always getting the C's, barely passing, and it came to this point that at 12, I think, this was one teacher that he saw my drawings and so on, and at the art class, and he went like, I'm gonna give you an A, and I was like, wow, this is surprising, and I asked him why, and he said, look, you're pretty chaotic, messy, and pretty terrible, but your concept is great, And so that kind of made me just fantasize about the idea of maybe I could work on the arts because my concept was good, And at that time, it was like with my best friend at school, like we start fantasizing about joining film school and basically got in my head. And that was, when I was 12. And then when I was 18, I joined eschewed, which is like, an incredibly university at Barcelona, that it was my hometown. So I was very lucky that to be there. And it just was very newly created. And all the teachers were so passionate, so full of energy. They were so new, like they had no credits, but they had that beautiful thing that, pushes us all, that is like passion. And that's what I learned there, to be, as passionate as one can get. And then it was like, and then I was at first year at university and I was PAing, serving food, and then I shoot. And then the graduates were like, wow, these guys that are graduating, at cinematography, they are amazing. They are so fun. They're having so much fun that somehow I was like, I want to be like those guys. I don't want to be a director. That's too difficult, But so I was like, I joined the cinematography, specialized course at cinematography there, had a lot of fun. I work a lot, watch a lot of movies there. And also discovered that, I was not the most talented guy. I was not the most visual guy, but, we care so much. We work so hard that we learn a lot. And I think like the importance of teachers have, changed my life in a way, like from early on to this day, the more you learn from great people, the more you grow as a filmmaker, So I finished that. I did a short film, The Natural Route, that won Sundance and it won everywhere. It was incredible. And then, somehow I made it into a film set of this very young filmmaker called Albert Serra that was doing his kind of first movie. And somehow I convinced him that I wanted to be on set, and somehow I got a camera there, and it was like a $15,000 movie. Shot on mini DVX, the DVX 100A, which was an incredible digital camera at the time. And that movie, that was like bonkers. It was completely bananas. Like, it was completely the opposite of what film school should be. It was like just suddenly I learned more making that movie than 4 years in film school, because it taught me all the other things that are not technical, that all the other things that are not rules about making a film, but that create something that we fall in love. He kind of looked for the magic and the soul of a piece of art. And that's what really excites us about watching a movie. And so I learned that a lot. It was incredible that movie ended up going to Cannes at the director's fortnight. So, and that was my first movie. And I thought, getting to Cannes is super easy. But no, I've never, again, put a movie in Cannes, which would be my dream, to have movies in Cannes. So it was like, we are all lucky sometimes. It's just taking the best of that opportunities. But it was, and then so no one will hire me at 23, although I had won Sundance, I got a movie in Cannes, and no one will hire me. So I was fortunate enough to get into the NFTS in London, which I believe someone here has been as well.
Why that choice? Why did you decide to go?
I had a friend, Carlos Catalan, there that was already there, and he convinced me that was incredible. I was perfect. He was the best film school in the world. And basically, it turned out I applied. I got in there with two other friends of mine, Neusuye and Marcel Forest. And when we got there, it was like we realized that Carlos convinced us to join just because he was very bored and wanted to have friends.
He was probably lonely.
Exactly. He was very lonely. So it was like kind of, okay, so we're here for 2 years. And no, it was that kind of thing that you never stop learning. I think that's the lesson, that there's so much to learn in filmmaking, and in arts, that there's never it's never stops. So the more you learn, the better, and the more and the more and the hungrier you are as well, the more you progress as a filmmaker. So it was kind of it was a beautiful journey of 2 years of keep shooting. That's the other thing, because when you're at a film school, you can shoot a lot, and that was very, very useful. And also, it connected me with the industry, in Spain, the industry was not that big, but the NFTS was very good at connecting with the industry and making it more like a professional environment and so on. And connect, I also learned English there, which is pretty useful nowadays, So
I guess, yeah.
So and then I was very, very lucky to just come out of film school, and I was on the line of a cinema at 12 o'clock at night at Edinburgh Film Festival with a short film I did in the Arctic Circle with a friend of mine, Edward Edwards, a documentary. And I started talking to the person next to me, and we became friends. And it happened that a year later, I sent her my reel that I was not working at all or something, with the same reel. And she happened to receive a call from Tom Ford's producer. Tom Ford was 6 weeks away from shooting. He had seen everyone's reel in LA. Everyone was too fancy, and he was looking for some European, cheap, available, fast, and creative DP. And when she sent my reel of this short film shot on Super 16, soft, and kind of poetic and with classical music, he just kind of pointed at it, watched 2 minutes of the reel, and said, "I want this guy." And
Wow.
The same reel I had not worked for 6 months. No one was paying attention to it, and suddenly some person thinking outside of the box fell in love with it. And basically I got on a plane, not knowing if I was only going for the interview and then coming back or staying for the film that was starting in 5 weeks. But I was very fortunate that we got along very well, and he loved what I was shooting, and he had the power also, he was the producer, the financier, the writer, the director, and and he just follow his instincts. He believes in his instincts. He has a great intuition, and he's like, I want this guy, and I'm gonna go for it. And that's how it went.
You think shooting so much, at university in Barcelona and then at the film school, gave you confidence to be able to? Because I must say, if in your position, myself at that point, I would have probably said no. I'd have shied away.
You don't say no. Like you just try and see what happens. And I think confidence is a big part of what we do. I've never lacked confidence, I have to say. I'm a confident guy. Having or not talent or skill or anything, I just I go for it. That's, the way I am, but I look, I had diarrhea for a week, I was like really scared for a week, but then I woke up in that morning off in the Burbank hotel, having not slept with jet lag, and I look at myself in the mirror and I was like, you know what, Edu, this is your chance. Go for it, and the beautiful thing is like he had fallen in love with what I was doing and what I knew what to do. So at the end of the day, I only just had to be myself. I had to just go for it, being myself, doing what I do, doing what I knew at that point, and making the most of it, working hard, being kind, and trying my best with that. And I think, Tom is a generous soul, and he cared for the film, and he had that vision, and we share that vision for the film, and actually I think we complemented each other and we made each other better. And although both of us, were very, it was very early in our careers. It was his first film, was my third film, and it was like, nerve-wracking the first time in Los Angeles. So it was,
But he's such a visual guy too, because of what he does, designing and everything. It must have been really interesting to work with someone who wouldn't be looking overall at the scene, but be looking at the fact that the red roses in the back you couldn't really see or whatever.
Exactly. It as we all know, it does help when you work with someone that puts all. We say in Spanish, we put all the meat in the barbecue. You just put, whenever you put something beautiful in front of the camera, our job is 10 times easier, as we all know, it's all about, and he cared about every single detail of the costume, of the art department, of the props, of the lighting and the camera. And he had it very clear in his head what he wanted to do, and he had worked for it for years on that script and that and he wanted to prove the world, that he was not only a successful and talented fashion designer, but he was also capable of directing a movie, which was his passion. He also mentioned that was the happiest he's ever been was shooting A Single Man. So it's kind of beautiful that we have this job that opens hearts and creates passions, and I feel very fortunate. I feel very fortunate to have encountered those kind of people around, in my life.
Was there any? Did you find it easy to adapt to working in America? I mean, they have a sort of slightly different system, but to do a film in Los Angeles compared with even doing a film in London is very different.
Completely. But I remember thinking at the time that, making a movie with talented people is easier than making a short film. It's like short film, you are with a half-baked script with people that they don't know what they're doing, professionals that are there, but they're not happy, not being paid, they're doing it for us a favor. Whereas you do a $5 million movie in Hollywood with talented people. I had Jim Planette as my gaffer, Manny Duran as my key grip, Chris Blauvelt was my operator, Jason McCormick was the second, my first AC, Steve McDougall was my second camera. So it's like, so many incredible, talented people that actually what you need to go there and do your best, manage leadership, and managing is a big part of our job. And that's a difficult thing, especially in a language that is not yours, in a country that you've never worked in. And so it was definitely a big challenge. But at the same time, there is this thing that is like the universal language of cinema, that you just understand each other with the people that you that you have similar passion and similar points of view and similar ways of doing, so I think that helped me a lot, and having a great team is incredible. It's just what makes it. Dan Bishop was the production designer, Aaron Phillips the costume, and Tom is just like a superb craftsman. He knows about everything. He's very dedicated, and he cares about what things look like.
Do you ever? I just thinking on that shift between Europe and America, the sort of way of lighting. Did you have a way of lighting? I mean, I suppose this might be totally simplistic and not interesting, but it seems like in Europe there was a more of a push towards going soft light and bouncing light sources, and then that took a long time to get to the United States, frankly. And I've heard tales of European cinematographers coming to the States and being shocked by the difference in the approach to lighting.
I didn't feel the cultural difference on the visual storytelling that much. Because at the end of the day, when I was studying film school in Barcelona and SCAC and then FTS, I was looking up to American cinematographers a lot, and American films, and the idiosyncrasy of the film school in Barcelona, was very Seven was the reference at the film school, and that kind of thing, and obviously there are. I think more than in the lighting, I saw it a lot more on the way to tell the stories, and the camera. The camera work, I think it changes a lot more when you are in America than when you are in Europe. I saw it more on that than in the lighting myself, But
so the more the idea of shooting coverage in America rather than a shot.
Exactly. Yeah. The obsession for coverage, the obsession for being, in front of the character, seeing both eyes and these kind of things, whereas and the editing of it all, and I think there's more an attitude to filmmaking in Europe that encourages the risk-taking and the ballsiness and that kind of trying a bit to be more creative, putting the camera and telling different stories with the camera than American cinemas, or at least what I have encountered. I mean, it's not a criticism. It's like it's different ways of making movies, and they all have their qualities, But I think I miss some European film knowledge sometimes in American directors, a little bit. That is like they don't know who Haneke is, or the the Dardenne brothers, or Ken Loach, who are masters, and America sometimes looks too much on their own, also on their own references. What do you think? What have you encountered the biggest difference to be from Europe and to shoot in America?
I think what you just said was really perceptive. I mean, I think early on when I was here, I was accused of being too European. I didn't know what that meant really, whether it was my accent or what. The idea that you shoot a shot for a scene rather than you shoot coverage and multiple cameras.
And also, though, isn't it too that Europeans at one point, more of them were operating the camera, while over here we oftentimes had operators?
I think that's a bit of a misnomer, really. I mean, I think it just depends on the person, I mean, in Europe, Chris Menges and people like myself operated, but then there was a whole tradition of lighting cameramen who never went near the camera.
That's true.
So I just think it's where you are, really.
Yeah, I think it's very beautiful when you combine styles, when you combine the cultural references, different directors, and I think it's like, the more background of us we put in our movies, the more they grow, and in the same way, like filmmakers that I respect is like also like, you know, when they are buried their own is also like, I love seeing that when they take the references of the movies they love, the movies they've seen, and they use them in their own, you know. I think there's a combination of making films with the great references that makes them grow, you know, and sometimes I think it's good not to be only one thing, not to be too simplistic, you know. Also, you don't want to play all the notes. You don't want to be the classic director that tries to do everything, you know, and puts all the fingers in the piano, and it just doesn't create a melody.
Yeah.
We talked to Wim Wenders a while ago. As a director, he's the first person that comes to my mind when you say about blending styles, because you look at his early work and it's so European.
Exactly.
I mean, it's so long-held shots, existential, kind of the shot is telling the story. Absolutely. And then you look at his later work that embodies kind of American noir and all the rest of it, and then the last film he did in Japan goes back to his more sort of original sensibility, his observational camera. I find it really interesting how he, you know, takes different ideas from here and there and everywhere.
Yeah.
And I also think it's great that you don't just do one thing.
Yeah.
That truly good filmmakers can really get into the Western genre and then do something completely different.
Yeah.
I think that's
so. Then you went back to Spain. I think you went back to Spain to shoot Buried, right? And
yes.
you shot a film that's all in a coffin underground.
Yes.
So what about that? That's a pretty bold choice.
Yeah. You know what? I had I was 27 at that point, and I was like, things were exploding in my mind a little bit too much, you know, and I had other offers, but somehow when I received Rodrigo Cortés' offer of Buried, actually Xavi Jimenez, one of the greatest cinematographers in Spain, had to pull out because he was going to direct his own movie. So then I was like, I was a second choice, last minute choice, but happy to be. But when I received that call, I was like, there was something in my heart that I could not, stop it. I felt like I was so thrilled by the idea of doing, I would never do a movie as challenging and in small space than a coffin. And I thought, I met with Rodrigo, and he's so knowledgeable, of film history. He's a big fan of Martin Scorsese, and it's just like, I cannot not do this. I have to take the risk. I have to, just go for it. And it was, I remember suffering a lot, I have to say. I think it's one of the movies I've suffered a lot. I lost a lot of hair.
Which is funny, really. Why would you suffer? Because you're not going on very many locations. You're not weather dependent. You're shooting in a coffin.
Yeah, but we're shooting on 35, and the light source is like, sometimes it's a Zippo, and you put the Zippo next to it. You put the light meter next to his face, and it just says EV. EV so many times, and then you want to feel a bit better, and you get the light meter closer to the light source just to see that there is a number. That it's not that the light meter is broken. And it's like there's nothing you can do, and your next sentence is, let's shoot. So you are scared. You're scared. Like you don't know what's gonna come out. And there was like, and we were pushing the limits of film stock, and there were some digital cameras that were at first that was like, oh, we should shoot with the red, and Rodrigo and me were like, no, we should shoot on film. This movie should feel like the grain and the texture should be, and we just went for it, and sometimes very scary because we wanted it to be quite dark, and they even called me from the lab and told me, hey, there's 3 shots that are just not usable. And I remember going there scared to be fired. And we saw the first shot, and it was just so dark, but it was so perfect. That one was perfect. And then the next 2 were so dark, but terrible. And it was like that third of a stop, fourth of a stop that sometimes, with someone in such a tight space that you cannot read. I mean, I was shooting wide open, 1/4 all the time, incredible focus pullers, an incredible camera team, but it's like, you're playing so with the limits so much of the exposure that sometimes you make mistakes, but what it was beautiful and the big learning curve from coming out of that screening was that Rodrigo came to me and said, let's not stop. Let's keep pushing. Let's keep going. Let's keep taking risks. You're we're gonna talk to Ryan and say, Ryan Reynolds, we have to shoot again that thing. We said to screw it up. But it's like, it was in the essence of the project. It was the essence was to be ballsy, to take risks, to go for it. And that's how, we got really excited about the film and, about the filmmaking involved. And I still think it's one of my favorite movies I've done because of the risk I took. I even when I watch it now, I just like, how did they do that? And it's like, I don't know, how did we do that? And I still don't understand the level of of ballsiness, of like going for it, and that's quite beautiful when that happens. Also, I think it's being young helps, and that's the thing I try.
It always does.
I'm trying to learn from you. How do you do it to keep, getting older, but just stay young,
No, I'm Peter Pan.
Did you work out the shots ahead of time? So did you walk on knowing what the shots would be, or did you grab them on the day?
But it was Rodrigo. It was his. He takes all the credit. He was the mastermind behind. He just he did all the shot lists. There was this concept that we came to the conclusion of like, let's not repeat a single shot in the whole movie. Let's keep every time reinventing the wheel on every scene. So we don't do 2 shots in the coffin that are the same. Obviously, editing wise, both shots are, like you see the same shot, twice or 3 times sometimes. But the concept of the shot was always different. The composition, the lens, the light, we always try to change, not do, let's do the same close up. No. Let's look for something else. And that was kind of a wonderful way of looking at filmmaking. Let's not repeat ourselves. Let's keep pushing the envelope and changing, and finding something.
It was also really interesting because you were in the coffin, and then every so often you would have that high wide shot that, defied physics. But, we were up and looking down. Did you guys talk about when those shots would happen?
Yeah. They were carefully thought through by Rodrigo, and he's also the editor of the movie, so he's a mastermind on shot listing and crafting the scenes in the way he knows. He's very peculiar and precise, I would say. But and he had that idea that to break the walls once in a while. We are obviously watching a movie. We are there in the coffin, but sometimes it's like we're talking meta. We're talking like, let's talk bigger and just go to the concept of a guy in a coffin in the middle of nowhere. And I thought it was interesting. I think also some people got out of the movie at this point sometimes, but it also brings sometimes surprises, elevate what you're watching, and sometimes they don't totally work, but sometimes they bring you something different that make it interesting in a different way that you were thinking.
I think it was certainly a better way to show the character's isolation, better than going and doing a shot above ground.
Exactly.
This is where he is. You know what I mean? That would have really blown it. I thought the first time it cut wide, it did take me out of it, but later on, it didn't bother me at all.
I quite liked it. I thought it was very graphic.
Exactly. There is something to it, and it makes more of the concept. And also there was no outside to go to. We were shooting in a stage in Barcelona, and he never wanted. He never wanted to shoot anything outside. None of the voices outside, and he was very clear about that. And I thought that was a great idea to stay with Ryan all the time. until the end, and I think, that was pretty ballsy. There's some risk in life you take that is like makes you suffer a lot, makes you, lose some hair, get some white hair, but it's also sometimes when you watch it back, it's like something that makes you the most proud. Doesn't it happen to you guys?
Yeah. Well, yeah.
Yeah.
It takes a few years to watch it back and feel proud of it, but
To forget it all.
to forget all the angst that you go through. But,
Exactly. It's nerve-wracking, but that's also part of the thrill, of the enjoyment of what we do, like that. It keeps you on your toes and keeps you just suffering, and it's like you're still, But I think in the last years, I've learned to enjoy the process a lot more than at first.
That's good.
I kind of realized that this is, being a DP is my life. It's what I do. It's who I am. It's just like every day of the life, every morning, I'm a DP. And so I was like, you know what? I just need to enjoy what I do and have more fun, surround myself with people that I love, that I care, and it goes both ways. And I think that made me happier watching, doing what I do, Because at first I think being so young and I was a bit trying to kind of hide, and it was, the nerves and the insecurities. Now I feel a bit more like, okay, this is who I am, take it or leave it, and I think being honest and being yourself is what has helped me the most, and I understand that some people won't like they won't like me, and some people I won't be their cup of tea. But at the same time, it's also quite, but when you find the people that really root for you and help you, that's when I get the most excited, It's like, I imagine the same with you, with the people that you've come back and shot many times, right?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I was very lucky to tie up with Joel and Ethan for a similar reason that you were chosen to do Single Man. I was chosen to do Barton Fink because I was European and I was non-union and I was cheap.
Luck plays a big part in filmmaking.
Plays a big part, doesn't it? Yeah.
Being in the right place at the right time.
You also, around the same time, did something completely different, which was Finisterre.
Finisterre. Yeah, Finisterre.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Wow, I didn't think you were going to ask me about this one because it's like very, what I've been doing, I think throughout, or now looking back, I think it's like I was doing American or British films, but then I would go to Spain to do the art house things that I would fall in love with, or the weird projects, or the crazy, not making any money, but kind of filling my soul as well, and being passionate for filmmaking. And Finisterre was one of those, and also was falling in love with a director, falling with love of a personality. That has happened to me a few times, and especially with Joel Edgerton, for example. It was like, I like those people so much, those directors, that I just want to be with them and just spend time with them and shoot their project and follow their vision and go for it. And I think that has, pay off in a beautiful way. I really like Sergio Caballero, the director of Finisterre, as a person, and he made me laugh so much, and his ideas were so wild and bonkers that somehow it's like, yeah, why not? Let's do this, and I think that it keeps the job exciting, and your life just kind of, you're never stepping on the same shoes again. You just keep going, keep finding, keep learning, keep growing, and I find it like that was kind of a beautiful way of doing a next step.
Yeah, talk about though, and I think two of our favourite films that you've worked on were both directed by Joel Edgerton.
Yeah,
I mean,
he's great.
Which ones are they?
The Gift and The Gift and Boy Erased. I think they're both really wonderful films. Can you talk about how that came about and that experience working with Joel? Because
especially when you're working with an actor that's also in the movie, does that put more on you because you've really got to watch the performance for them, right? And talk to them
a little
afterwards.
bit. You work with actors, directors, right? And
I have,
and it's kind of complicated because they have too many things sometimes. We know how hard it is to be a director, and then on top of that, you are in front of the camera. You need to get dressed and makeup, and then and be the leader of the ship. But with Joel, it was a bit like love at first sight. It was like falling in love with the man, falling in love with who he was. I remember meeting him before I read the script, and I met him, and I was like, you know what? I want to be friends with this guy. I would love this guy to be my friend. And then I read the script, and I couldn't stop thinking about it, and couldn't stop thinking about the script. So it was like, okay, yeah, I'm gonna lose money. It's not gonna be, it's a small little movie, but it's like, but I'm excited, and I'm, there is something inside me that is giving me some shivers, and it's the same feeling I had with Buried or with some of the other ones. So it's like kind of, let's follow that instinct. Let's follow that because it has proven to bring you some joy and happiness. So then we went, and with Joel, it was tough because he was in front of the camera playing the weirdo and the gift, but also like he's very collaborative. We talked a lot about the film and how we wanted to do it, and obviously you take a little bit more than normal on the film set, but it also. When he had the biggest scenes, he also had his brother, Nash Edgerton. He was also there, who's also a director.
Oh, that's right.
And that helped him a lot as well, to know when to move on, when was good, or what to make it better with performances. But it was a very short film. I think like until then, all my movies were under 22 days, and that was also like 22, 23 days, so it was like you have to shoot very quickly, you have to adapt, you have to just like take it as it comes, choose the right location, choose the right time of day, and also like you have to go sometimes. But we went a bit like, I think the happiest I am of the gift, of the scenes of the gift, is the one of the bottle on top of the when Weirdo, when Joel's character gives them a present of a bottle, that there is some screw up thinking behind that it's gonna go wrong. And there's this shot of like the bottle sitting on the kitchen table, and they are talking, and the camera is pushing into a bottle, and the dog comes in, and it's just so simple. It's a 1.5-minute shot, and it's just like on a bottle, and Rebecca Hall and Jason Bateman are in the background talking, but it's I think that's when we're like, oh, this is the kind of thing we need to do. And I think like we learned that lesson, and I think with Boy Erased we went further and we took some more chances on that line. And I think that was some kind of, it's good when you keep learning and growing with your directors, and you keep understanding what the movie needs. And sometimes it's not what you thought, but it's like it happens, right? It's like as you're shooting, you learn, and you kind of discover what fascinates you about the story you're telling and the best way to tell it. And I think that was a part of the learning curve with Joel.
It's kind of a big learning curve as well, just kind of getting in the head of the director and getting kind of like in sync with the way the director wants to work, doesn't it? I mean, for me, that would, I mean, obviously I work with directors numerous times and it's different, but well, the first off though, I really like a long prep period. I hate sitting in the van going from location to location, but on the other hand, I love it because that's such an important time when you're sitting there with the director and you actually can't really get to know them,
Denis Villeneuve has always said that prep is the time for dreaming.
Yeah.
Because anything is possible. You can just, you have so much freedom and then you have to shoot it.
Yeah. I suffer in prep. I'm a bit like too nervous and anxious in prep. Like, and I just want to shoot. I feel like what I want to learn in prep, and I'm not like someone that, shot this super specifically with the director sometimes. And sometimes I'm not given by producers, I'm not given even the time. Like you can ask for it and it's like they will give you. Sometimes it's just like, I get very short periods of prep. And what I realize is that my skill, or like what I do best, is my intuition. And I don't, and it's a very weird, I'm not proud of it or anything, of not prepping that much. It's like a bit like Robbie Ryan was saying, or Drew Daniels, that people I really admire, but it's just like, we don't feel, or my friend Arnau Valls, we don't feel like we feel like prep, we are struggling to do what we need to do, and sometimes for me prep is actually what I find more interesting. I don't want to be too specific about the technique or so on, or the shot list. Sometimes for me prep, what I like the most about prep is getting into the director's head, and getting the concept right, and understanding what's the purpose of that movie. What's the tone and the style we're looking for, and that's why what I enjoy about prep. But the very long weeks, I get a bit like anxious. I need to start shooting, and then when I start shooting, it's a different thing. And I admire the people that can prep a lot, and I wish I could. And I wish I was better at it, and something I need to work on for sure. But I also discovered that I'm on the van and I'm getting a bit anxious. I want to shoot. There is so many conversations go on for too long in prep. I like when conversations are short and to the point and pragmatic. But it's just me.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. Yeah. Yeah, no, I don't think so. I totally agree with you there. I mean, I sometimes get kind of bored out of my head thinking, well, it's why are we shooting? You're just talking around a problem that you can't solve till you're actually on the set with a camera.
All you do is you say, well, we could do it this way, or we could do it that way, or we could do it that way. And it's just like, well, we're living 5 different ways of doing it. Why don't we just do it?
And then also the problem gets bigger and bigger the more you talk about it. And really it's nothing. It's just like, okay, how do we blend this location to this location? Well, we could just pan the camera. But you can't really say that to somebody in prep and have them believe that it will work. But when you go and do it and you pan off one location and pan onto the next, and they put it in the cutting room and they go, oh my God, I didn't think that would work.
I think it's that. I think that what drives me a bit crazy is how long the conversations take. And it's sometimes important conversations as long as possible, as long as they need to be. But sometimes you get bogged down in the smallest details that are not making the movie better. You're just like getting the producer and the production designer and the director worried for a long time until you are actually capable of solving it on set. Is sometimes. I think that is what I don't enjoy about prep. But yes, I like talking about concepts and finding the movie, because I also use that time to find the movie, not only with the premises that the directors give you, and their vision, but also like the references and learning the script. I think that is good. That I really enjoy. I just don't, I call them pre-production talks. That when you start talking about something very small, very specific, forever, and it just keeps going, and you can have that conversation for 5 weeks, and it's like, and then when you're on set, in 10 minutes you solve it. Sometimes this what drives me a bit crazy.
The only thing that is important, I mean, like I mostly have worked on sort of lower budget films. I mean, I remember being on, I think we were on True Grit out in New Mexico at the same time as some big Marvel movie was shooting. And I had friends on the crew, and they in the parking lot where they were crew based, they had 2 Technocranes, right? A sort of whatever they are, 75 foot and a whatever the smaller one is. And we wanted one for a day. So we had to actually, in our schedule, say exactly which day we wanted to take the crane. And it would come in the morning and leave the next morning, but even before we got an okay from dailies, So prep is important for that, isn't it? You know what I mean?
It is very important for equipment, for managing expectations of what you're gonna get every day. No, I didn't mean to be like disrespectful of prep. I love prep in a way. I just suffer a bit, and I see I see of the importance of it and the value of preparing as much as possible. It's just not in my nature. So I just
no. But I think the job of a cinematographer is a balance, isn't it, between that creative kind of instinctive reaction to something, but also you are kind of a manager in many ways, kind of working out what equipment you want, when it is, and then working with the AD, kind of structuring the schedule so it works, right?
So if you don't like prep and you don't like doing it, how in the world did you do Quien Te Cantara? That was such a beautiful, and there were so many reflection shots and everything. Surely, didn't you prep them a little, or did you know going in? I mean, everything seems so concise.
Interesting.
Oh, thank you. But I think, I was such a big fan of him as a director in his previous movie that when I received the call, I was blown away. And it's not true that I don't prep. I do prep a lot, but it's just, I suffer. Well, my issue is I suffer in prep more than I suffer in the shoot sometimes, So, but no, I mean, obviously he's also like, he did the storyboard. Carlos did the storyboard, all the movie, and we were in the locations many times and we talked it through. It was also kind of concise on the scale and on the shoot day. We were shooting, on the shoot in locations, it was pre-produced. We didn't have that many. So we talked it through quite a lot and at the end of the day, obviously, you adapt to every director, right? I mean, it just, the nature of the beast for me is that to learn and to be like the director, needs me to be, so some directors are very intuitive and some others are very, very creative and some others are very prepped and knowledgeable. And I think learning to just be yourself in those situations and every single different director is also part of what is the most difficult of this job and the most exciting at the same time. So I think when a director needs me to talk it through every shot, I'm very happy as well. And we all know that the more you talk beforehand, the better ideas the more relaxed you can be on set, and then you can be open to improvisation, and I think that's when it gets the best, when you prepare something consciously and with a concept behind with the director, but then you are on set and you actually don't look at the storyboard or the shot list. You actually, probably have it engraved in your head and thought about it, and there is something that, but you are also responding to the reality of the day, of the schedule, of the actors, of the mise en scène, and of the craft you want to create. So that combination, I think, it's when it gets the best. And I think Quien Te Cantara was a bit like that. We were, looking for, there was a kind of a storyboard, but then we'll be looking for other details with other stuff. We will be to create the whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it was beautifully done.
Yeah,
and
it's a really beautiful film.
It did make me feel that you must have had 100 days and a lot of time to think about things because it conveyed
even the opening shot is like so precise on this sort of detailed shot, and you think,
there was
pretty impressive.
Some thought through for sure, and there was some 10, 15 takes on that one, but for sure. But it's again, it's a $3 million movie in this case, and in Spain, which it gets you a lot more than in America, Spain, for sure. But it's 30 days of shoot, or 35 maybe, and not a lot of time to do it. Like, when was the last time you shot 35 days?
Probably a while ago. Passion Fish, I think. So that was quite a few years ago now.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
not that I wouldn't want to, but I just don't get offered those films. So.
No, there's something wonderful about shorter schedules because you're just on high alert the whole time, and it's kind of exciting every day.
I take chances on smaller films that they had, that they shoot less days, because I think that's why I struggle. I haven't taken any big television series, because I'm worried of being 6 months or 8 months on a set, shooting, and on a TV series, for example. I quite like the short and sweet, and take the gamble, take the and put it all the meat in the barbecue, go for it, But yes, of course, the more days you have, the more time you have to be creative sometimes to find stuff. And, also, looking back at some of the films, I feel like, I wish I had a few more days to craft this, to tell the story better, to do a bit more of developing shot that we didn't have the time sometimes, and on those short movies. It is a struggle for sure, but I think you take it for what it is as well, and you enjoy each project. You try to find the good things on each project, because if not, you will get depressed. And no, it's not about this. It's about like finding the good things, and not the green grass is always greener on the other side.
You also did Passing in black and white.
Yes.
That must have been. Was that fun working in black and white?
Oh, yes. Don't you find, guys, that black and white is like a joy for cinematographers?
I wish. I'm sort of taking a lot of still photographs at the moment. It's all black and white. I love it. I wish I could do more in cinema, but there you go.
Exactly. I think it's one of, it's a beautiful tool, to be able to tell stories in black and white. And I think in our department in cinematography, I think it shines more. It's easier to get a beautiful image in black and white than it's in color, I feel, all the time, So when Rebecca Hall called me, we've done 2 movies together. She was the actress in The Gift, and she was the actress in a British film called The Awakening. And when she called me for Passing, she already knew there was going to be black and white and 4:3, and because it was on the essence itself of the movie to be black and white, because it's talking about the people that are passing, that passing as a different color of skin, so it was kind of, it's electrifying, it's thrilling when you get a movie that the form is so interconnected with what you're telling, and it was that was a joy, because at the end of the day, that it's a dream for a DP when with every image you're telling something about what the movie is about the characters. It's just, so I really enjoy, and I thought it was again a big challenge, but also one of those that like you wish you had one of those every year, few years, because it was such a beautiful project to be part of, with incredible actors, and Rebecca also just such a visionary, clever, fun, interesting person to be with, so it was one of those that it's a joy. And then it came out well. Like, the funny thing is also like, it also what I enjoyed there is that we end up shooting on the mini Alexa Mini on anamorphic lenses, and then we cut it to 4:3. So we just kind of fell in love with those Lomo anamorphic lenses, and because there was no studio attached when we produced the film, we went to the screening, or the test screening of the test, and we saw it, and we just fell in love with that format, with those lenses, the way how the image was kind of a fairy tale, and it was kind of destroying itself as it was being created. And that it was 1.7K of resolution, but because there was no studio or no one to tell us, hey, you should deliver in 4K, we just went for it, and I think it was part of the joy and the discovery of that film was also like, it's resolution is not as important as they are making us think. It's just the important is the result and the image created. And sometimes it can be 8K and sometimes it can be half a K. But what is it? Those Ks, what are telling of the story? How are they helping the story? And it was kind of it was very interesting. Like to just like go against the norm and shoot a 4:3 on anamorphic, and it was like, on black and white. It was all so against everything I'd done before that I really enjoy the process and the path, and the people and the crew was incredible as well, so 21-day shoot as well.
Wow. Has your process changed? You talk about, you were doing buried on film, and then you were talking about doing passing on digital. Has your process changed as technology's changed?
I imagine so. I learned at film school on film, and then my first films were were some on digital and some on film, but then as time goes by, it's getting a bit harder and harder to shoot on film. I will still love to shoot on film just because it gives you this extra element of magic, of unpredictability, of suffering, of hair losing.
Suffering.
Oh, no. You are a masochist.
That there is a beauty to it. There is certain magic and soul of the project, But truth is that it's getting harder and harder to shoot on film, especially in America, and I enjoy digital as well. I take it for what it is. And also, obviously, it's a lot easier to see the image, to know what you're getting. You have it in front of you. And it's probably there is less responsibility on your shoulders. But there is some magic about shooting on film that I miss, and I want to come back to it. Do you think you're going to come back to film?
If the director wanted it,
and it depends on the project.
To make sense.
Yeah,
I'm interested. Do you don't operate the camera, but if I'm buried, then how were you really judging what was being shot?
On Buried, I operated the camera. On some of those movies, I operated the camera. It depends on the movie, on the project, on the director. I would say half of my movies I operated and half of my movies I haven't. So like. On Buried, for example, I was the main camera operator, but there was Pau Esteva, one of my best friends, like doing big cameras. So we had two cameras a lot of the times in a coffin. But on Passing, I was operating, but then at some point I was also like, Aaron Brown was helping me sometimes operating, so like sometimes I would jump on, sometimes I won't, and depends on the film, and how many cameras, for example, because sometimes I shoot with more than one camera, not my choice or something. But when I shoot with more than one camera, then it's very frustrating if you are operating and someone else is doing the other one, and you don't have time to see or correct or advise on what they've done or and talk it through because you are going to the next stage. When it's one camera, I do want to operate and I do enjoy operating most of the times. But again, I'm open and I'm a okay operator. I like it. I enjoy it. I find the joy of it, and I do it a lot in commercials. I operate all the time. But if I find an operator that is great, that brings something to the table, I also take it. And depending on the director, some directors really benefit from me being next to them, and some others don't want me next to them. So it's like it depends. So it's like I think every job is different, and I take it like this, and I don't have preconceived. I'm not. every job is, I take it as it comes, and with the needs it comes, and whatever it makes it the best for the movie. In a way, I try to go with that idea.
Yes, because I can understand shooting digital, a cinematographer not having to look through the camera because they've got a calibrated monitor now. But I mean, obviously, I was brought up doing film, and I could not shoot a film if I wasn't looking through the camera. I don't understand.
Most of the films I shot on film, I operated the camera because of that reason as well. You know, you judging the light through the lens of the film camera is actually very important. But I also, you know, I don't know how you do it to be so good at what you do, and then also operate and also do the light, and you know, and it's so many elements sometimes that it's also my head explodes sometimes when I have a very difficult setup and difficult to operate with actors crying, and you know, it's a lot of elements that that you have to take care of, and sometimes it's like, wow, okay, wait, maybe if I do one thing, this is what I can do well, you know, and I can focus on that, and someone else is, you know. But yeah, again, it's dealer's choice, and everyone has their own way and their own skill, you know. But I mean, I wish I was, and I was taught at the NFTS, I was taught to operate the camera at the same time but I also felt like I somewhat was missing, you know, something, because I was too focused on, you know, you're looking at the focus so hard that you're not looking at the background, you know, and it's just complicated. What you do, it's pretty incredible.
It's really interesting you say that. It's really interesting you say that NFTS, they encourage you to operate in light, because I remember Ozzie Morris writing me a letter. Ozzie Morris was teaching at a film school on a couple of days. I hardly talked to him then, but he wrote me years later and said, after, I don't know what film it was, it might have been after, I don't know what film I'd shot, but he liked it anyway, wrote me to say how much he liked my work on this particular film. And he said, you could be quite good one day if you get an operator and stop operating the camera yourself. Which I thought was really choice. It's funny.
Thank God that you didn't listen, you know. I mean, it's true that I find that the camera needs, and I think the camera is actually one of the most important, you know, I think it's sometimes more important than lighting, to be honest. You know, I think you can tell more things with the camera than lighting somehow. And I think there is definitely an important relationship between the camera and the light that it needs, you know, they need to go together. So I totally support you on operating. Roger, you're doing great. but I also need, anyone needs to see the, you know, limitations, and sometimes, you know, I just think like I'll be more beneficial for the film doing it another way, you know, and you know, but it's
that's a personal choice.
Exactly,
too.
and that's what also is beautiful, you know. And also, like, I found some operators sometimes that they've really have made me grown as a filmmaker, and they've really like brought something to the film that if I had done it myself, maybe I wouldn't have done it like that way. Or my lighting would be a bit less, less, peculiar, or there would be less attention to the detail in lighting, you know. That's what I feel. But again, it's like I also find that it's very interesting that everyone does it the way they feel and the way that's best for the project. But also, I've been at film schools a lot, and they see you operating and lighting and being so good that then they all think that they can do it, and then it's like it's so much it's like
I always say that if I would rather just be operating, but then I wouldn't get offered films I do. So we often ask cinematographers which they would give up, lighting or operating.
Well, we know that what you would give up. Yeah. We also want to ask you about The Room Next Door, which is your more recent movie. What was it like working with Pedro? He has such a specific eye for color, doesn't he? I mean, he likes his color.
Yes.
Did you guys talk about color?
Of course. Yeah. I mean, just getting the call from one of the the greatest directors of our time, and being from Spain, it was just an honor that I couldn't believe, and so it was kind of nerve-wracking, to say the least, to also to step out into, Jose Luis Alcaine, one of my favorite DPs of all time, and just, just going to shoot a Pedro Almodóvar film in English for the first time. So it was kind of a very interesting process, because at the end of the day, I wanted to do a movie as much Almodóvar as possible, as much of his style, as much of Pedro as it could be. And I studied all his films, I watched it all, I analyzed all of them, and just seeing what the common denominators because he used some of the greatest cinematographers in Spain, and also Rodrigo Prieto, for example, did one, and you can see that there is some things that they all done, and it's because Pedro has a very peculiar way of looking at the world, and he wants to see it like this, and thanks God also, because also like we see an image of any of his movies, and you say, oh, this is Pedro Almodóvar, right? And that's kind of pretty unique, there's not many directors that you can say that about them. So stepping on those shoes it was nerve-breaking, and I was very anxious at first, but I think what Pedro, he was super nice and super kind, and he was always very supportive, and also that's also what I learned, that it's like when you surround yourself with good people and you work with good people, things get done much better and much easier, and I think what El Deseo has created, the family that they've created, that Pedro has created surrounding him, is unbelievable. And it's just like they are very aware of his skills and the way he makes films, and it's all very bananas the way they do it, but it works for them because they've crafted around the mastermind of Pedro Almodóvar. And Pedro has this thing that's like, he said to me the first meeting, he said, look, I have my instincts, I have the way I see the world, I see the world in a very peculiar way, but I also am happy to be surprised. I'm happy to grow my my repertoire. I'm happy to learn something and do things slightly different than before. But obviously, with Pedro, you cannot touch his reds. It was famous anecdote from a previous film he did is that the door was not the red that it was on screen, so he made them bring the door to the DI session and say, "You see, the red is not the same. It's not the same as seeing." So he's very peculiar with his reds, with his blues, with his greens, and yellows. He chooses very carefully. Ingmar Weinberg's production design, she was there for 6 months before the movie, like choosing every single detail of the design and with Pedro and every color. So he spends a lot of time on that, and he cares a lot, and obviously that shows in his movies.
It was his first time doing a movie in the English language, right? Was that difficult for him?
Yes, I mean he's done a couple of shorts before, and his English is pretty good, and also he, like Tilda said, he speaks the universal language of cinema, So but obviously when you're directing, and I learned that my first years working in English, it's just like what we do, it's so much about the detail and about the being specific, and especially directing, it's so hard when you want to do tonal things and the small things and the comma and the way, and Pedro has been always known for the way he treats Spanish in a very poetic way. He doesn't speak, his movies in Spanish don't sound like normal Spanish people. And in the same way that Madrid doesn't look at all like what it does look in his films. It's basically, he puts everything through him and expands it in a different way, and his personal vision. And that's what is beautiful about his movies, that his characters are outrageous and and all over the top, but it's the way he sees, and his sets are the same way, and his filmmaking and his music, it's all an exaggerated view on reality. He doesn't care about naturalism. He doesn't care about what is the reality of that. It's just he puts his own perspective on it, and that's what is very beautiful about working with him as well. So you have to throw all that naturalism that we've learned, and you just just care about the colors and how the actresses look, and and creating. He's obsessed with color, with luminance. He's obsessed with contrast, and that's what his movies and front light. He's worked all his life like this, and these 4 premises have been throughout his career. Any DP that has worked with him has been going through these steps, like with different results, with different styles, with different, but it's so it was kind of good to okay, I need to do this, and then how can I do it and bring it into something that, I'm also, it's very Pedro, but it's also I'm putting something of me and of my style and of the way I see and the way I like things, So trying to help on that direction was very interesting. But Pedro said one thing that just kind of blew my mind. He said, look, I want the light. The light should be like the cardigan of Penelope Cruz in Volver. It's what? What do you mean? Well, she works at a bar and she's wearing this red cardigan that is very beautiful and suits her perfect. But she works at a bar, and it could work. It could be that she's, that kind of character's cardigan, but it's Jean-Paul Gaultier. That's what he said. And it's it's not. It's how we take reality and elevate it to be more beautiful. It's light is for him is this. It's he wants it to feel quite, realistic, but then elevate it to some degree that is not exactly the normal world of all the other, inhabitants, And that was kind of, wow, that's an interesting analogy with his films and the way he sees light as well. He also said a funny one is that, well, not funny or interesting or also kind of disconcerting in a good way is I want the light to come from the characters. And it's
from
I want the light to come from inside. And it was and I was wow, I mean, how do you do this?
Yeah.
How do you guys would do this? So it was a beautiful challenge. But I think looking back at it, what I think he also meant is that what he cares the most is that the soul of the characters transpires through the lighting, and that we understand the characters and the actors, through light, So it's not only, it's not about putting a light bulb inside Julian Moore or Tilda Swinton.
No.
I mean, it's something. It's kind of a very poetic way of understanding his cinema, And I think that kind of it sends you in a role of thinking for a few days. How do I do this? How do I do this? And
I think that does. I mean, because I was going to say, I think the film looks different than other films of his that I've seen because it looks in a way sadder. It looks kind of it's more melancholy, if you like, and I think that is in the lighting as well.
And it works for the
which
story.
Is absolutely right for the story.
Yeah, I mean, when I read the script, I felt it was a very crepuscular. Does it exist a word in English? Crepuscular, kind of sunsetty. Kind of John Ford movies, westerns, the end of a career, the end of the life, and I find it, I find it, kind of, and I asked him about that, and he said, yeah, you know what, I see that we're talking about life and death, and it's kind of a sad story, but I also want it to feel, I want it to feel like life itself that has its ups and downs, but I want vitality. I want to feel the vitality for life and the enjoyment of life. And so, I hope it does, transfer that as well. So there's not a lot of comedy in the film. It's a lot, you're right. It's a bit, it's a bit darker sometimes here and there, but I think, or I hope at least that it kind of reflects the vitality of the characters as well, and the vitality and the will to live of Pedro. He wants so badly to live, to be alive, to be able to make films, I think that's kind of also like the beauty of the film, is how it transports us, like the vision of the vision of a director talking about life and death and sorority and all those important matters, but it's also through his eyes and his point of view on that, and he's so different than most of us, that it's kind of I find it quite interesting and beautiful to look at, to enjoy that film because of that, and I hope that. So it made me a bit sad that you thought it was kind of a bit sadder, because I wanted it to be.
I think there is other films. I think the other films I've seen of his, the colors are so bold.
Yeah.
It's so stylized. But this one, yeah. I mean, I wouldn't say it was sad and
you said melancholy. I think that works better.
Better word, I get what you're saying about, a John Ford Western, where it's the changing of time. It's like life passing and things renewing, but
no, you're right. I mean, it's also like the kind of film it is. He's known for doing comedies and very, characters a little bit kind of extravagant and over the top. And this is, a different tone overall. It just has I think a more mature vision on life. He's also a different person than he used to be. He's gone through a lot. He's lived a lot. And now he's doing these movies. And he knows that. What I was fascinated is to see how he is in a hurry to do as many films as he can, and also that feeling that he's gonna keep doing films no matter what, even if he's gonna try to keep making films even if he's in a and I find it quite beautiful. It's like it's a true filmmaker. Yeah, a true filmmaker that is like he's on set. He's the happiest when he's on set, and films are his world, and and I think there is a bit of that, on this film and what it tells. But I didn't want to go full sad. I wanted to still find some vitality, some.
It reminds me, and it reminds me of John Huston's last film, The Dead. Do you remember? Have you seen that?
Yeah, I mean, which was one of the biggest reference of the movie, and also
was it really?
Yeah, because it's in the because the whole the movie John Huston's The Dead is in the movie, and they watch that movie, and the paragraph of his last paragraph on the movie gets said a few times in the movie. So it's like, for us it was
I was forgetting the scene in the snow, looking out the window,
exactly
so, in the graveyard,
exactly. So it was like what I also tried in this movie was to connect Pedro with America, obviously, and it's like he's such a so European, so Spanish. And suddenly he's doing his first American movie. So it's like, how does it translate? That was one of the biggest questions in prep for all of us. How is Pedro, who's so, and I think one of the answers we found was in Edward Hopper, that it's one of the paintings of Edward Hopper is on the wall. And I felt, with Ingvar Weinberg, we it's, the way Hopper treated color contrast is actually quite similar in some ways. Different colors, different intensity, but different light as well. But it was kind of oh, if Pedro had been born in upstate New York, maybe he would have been more Hopper, So I think like Hopper was one of the biggest influences on shooting The Room Next Door and kind of translating, Almodóvar into America in a way. But again, we also we kept saying to ourselves, we are here because we want Pedro to be Pedro. We don't want, Pedro to be a complete tourist in New York and do a movie, that is, in a way, it's fascinating to see New York through his eyes. I think at the end of the day, when we were shooting with Pedro and all the people that were new, and again, there were not many new people because he's been using the same people for a long, long time, including his operator, for example, has done 25 of his movies. No, sorry, not 25, 25, the last 25 years of his movies is done by Joaquin Machado, So when we're shooting, the new people were like, oh, Pedro, maybe we should do it like this. And then at some point, it's like Pedro would decide how to do a thing. And we'll be like, wow, that's a surprising way of doing, or approaching it. And we'll never have thought of that. And then we'll have to remind ourselves, that's the reason why we're here. Because he doesn't he doesn't do things the normal way. I find fascinating when directors, they are not saying, you're thinking ABC and, the good ones are going into the D's, E, F's, G's, just kind of, they are just going outside of the box and they're not doing the normal thinking. And that's what fascinates us and makes us fall in love with their movies, and it's a reminder sometimes that surprise is good and thinking outside of the box is sometimes like the way to go, So I was surprised many times with Pedro and the way he sees the world and the way how peculiar he is at making films and and how it's his life and his way of living, but also it's like his family is the way he inhabits the world, and that's I feel like as cinematographers is that as well is important, that kind of approach to filmmaking like this, that this is a way of being. And that's why for me in the last years, it's been so important, the path and the fraternity of the film set and the people I'm surrounding myself with, as well as the result of the film. But also it's for me like the biggest thing in the last years has been also keeping a family together, keeping my family. I have 2 kids, a wife, and it's kind of, it's part of our lives as well. And I don't think as a cinematographer, sometimes we don't talk enough about how to keep our families together. And I really, envy you guys, I feel like you creating Team Deakins, for example, you have grown bigger as a concept. You make better films somehow, and I think it's very important to kind of respect and appreciate the people that surround us and makes us better, makes us grow, and and let us have the life we have, because if not, it would be impossible, and I think that has been my biggest will in the last years, to keep a family together and, trying to be home and choosing the projects and the films I do with the most, care. And also I do commercials as well to keep it living. How do you guys, like, I always look up to you guys as a relationship, how James has, supported Rogers, so much,
Well, we work together. I'm actually on the set.
All the time, so it makes a big difference.
Oh, yeah. I handle all the stuff so Roger can focus on shooting,
and
looking through the lens.
Now we've been doing exhibitions, haven't we?
Yeah.
We've been doing photo exhibitions. We just came back from Chicago. We got an exhibition on in Chicago.
Yeah,
so
incredible.
it's a new thing.
Yeah.
It's nice.
No, it's like sometimes we feel it's like, oh, it's that person or that that artist, but it's always, or that politician, but it's also the people that surround him or her is as important. We all know how that some people, those people that are in the shade sometimes, or they don't get the glory of the lights, but I think it has it has clearly benefit me, to be with the person I am, and it has grown, my career in a direction I would have never thought, So for me, it's right now very important, that factor of filmmaking, And I don't know how I got here, but I probably, but I think it's so important in my life right now, and that's also why I do commercials and how I mix projects and how I, choose sometimes, it needs to make sense for the whole family, Even my 6-year-old kid has an opinion on the films I do,
Thank you for doing this. This has been great. This has been really, really good.
Thank you, guys. Yeah.
If you'd like to sponsor the Team Deakins podcast, let us know at pod@teamdeakins.com. Thanks for listening. If you want more information and further discussion, check out the forums at www.rogerdeakins.com. Becoming a member is free, and you can ask follow-up questions there. And be sure to subscribe to the podcast for more new questions and topics. Also, check us out on Instagram at team.deakins. See you next time.